Danny Reed pressed his nose against the cold glass window and watched the stars drift by. He was only 8 years old, and space was supposed to be exciting, but right now it felt boring. His parents were somewhere in the big station talking about plants and dirt with important aliens. They told him to stay in the waiting room and draw pictures, but he had already drawn 5 spaceships and 3 planets. The whole place was called Harmony's Gate, which sounded cool, but looked like a bunch of metal hallways connected together. Danny kicked his feet against the chair and wondered if anyone would notice if he went exploring just a little bit. Then the walls started shaking. Not like an earthquake, but softer, like when a big truck drives past your house. Danny grabbed his sketchbook and looked around. Other people in the waiting room, mostly humans and a few blue-skinned aliens, started whispering and pointing at the windows. Outside, massive ships appeared from nowhere. They looked like giant crystals, dark and glittering, each one bigger than a whole city block back on Earth that a woman in a uniform ran past, talking fast into her communication device. Danny caught words like Imperial Fleet and Empress arriving early. His stomach did a little flip. He had heard his parents mention the Empress. She was the leader of the dragon aliens, the Saltharians, and she was scary important. The shaking stopped. Everything got very quiet. Then the announcement came through speakers in the ceiling, asking all diplomatic personnel to report to the main docking bay. Danny heard his mother's name. He grabbed his sketchbook and his small backpack and hurried out into the hallway. Maybe if he found his parents, they would let him see the Dragon Empress up close. The corridors were full of people rushing around. Nobody paid attention to one small boy slipping between groups of adults. Danny followed the crowd toward the docking bay, but got pushed to the side near a service corridor. He could hear strange sounds from down the hallway, like birds chirping but deeper, more musical. His curiosity won over his caution. Danny walked down the quieter hallway, following the sounds. The chirping grew louder, more urgent. It sounded sad, like something was hurting or scared. Danny had a dog back home named Buster, and he knew what frightened animal sounds meant. He found a partially open door. The nameplate said something in alien writing he could not read. Danny peeked inside. The room was huge, with strange glowing panels on the walls that made everything look purple and gold. In the center stood the biggest creature Danny had ever seen. She had to be 30 feet long, with scales that looked like polished black stones. Her wings were folded against her back, and they sparkled with tiny lights like constellations. Her head was elegant and sharp, with golden eyes that held ancient intelligence. This was the Empress. She had to be, but she was not looking proud or scary right now. She was staring down at the floor with something like horror on her reptilian face. On a soft cushion mat in front of her, 3 small creatures were struggling out of broken eggshells. They were baby dragons, each about the size of a cat, with tiny wings and wobbly legs. But something was wrong. Danny could tell from how the Empress stood rigid, not moving to help them. The babies were pure white, pale as snow, with pink eyes that blinked in confusion. Their scales had no color at all. They chirped desperately, reaching toward their mother with small clawed hands. The Empress took a step backward. Danny did not understand alien culture or royal protocol or anything complicated like that. He only saw 3 newborn babies struggling and scared, and a mother who was not helping them. The smallest one stumbled and started to fall off the mat onto the hard floor. Danny did not think. He just ran forward, but he dropped to his knees and caught the tiny white dragon before it hit the ground. It was warm and surprisingly soft. The baby stopped crying immediately and pressed against Danny's chest, making a small, comfortable sound. Its little heart beat fast against his hands. The other 2 babies noticed him. They crawled over each other, climbing onto Danny's lap, nuzzling against his arms and stomach. Their small chirps became happy sounds. They felt cold, Danny realized. Their skin was cooler than it should be. He unzipped his jacket and tucked them inside against his shirt. All 3 of them snuggled into his warmth and went quiet, their pink eyes slowly closing. Danny looked up and found the Empress staring at him. Her golden eyes were huge, her mouth slightly open in shock. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then footsteps thundered in the hallway. Armored guards burst through the door, weapons raised. There were Saltharians too, smaller than the Empress but still massive, wearing dark armor that hummed with energy. They pointed their weapons at Danny. One guard shouted something in a language Danny did not understand. It sounded angry and scared at the same time. Danny clutched the babies closer, feeling them squirm against him. He looked at the Empress, not sure what to say or do. The babies made soft sleeping sounds. They trusted him completely. The Empress raised one clawed hand, and the guards froze. She spoke in accented but clear English, her voice shaking slightly. "Lower your weapons. The human child has touched the royal hatchlings. They have chosen him." The biggest guard protested in their language. The Empress cut him off with a sharp hiss that made everyone flinch. She took a slow step toward Danny, then another, moving carefully like she was approaching something fragile and dangerous at the same time. She lowered her huge head until her golden eyes were level with his face. "Boy," she said softly, "what is your name?" "Danirid Mung. I mean, Your Majesty. I mean..." Danny swallowed hard. "I heard them crying." The Empress looked at the 3 white babies sleeping peacefully in Danny's jacket. Something complicated passed across her face, emotions Danny could not read. Pain, maybe. Confusion. Wonder. "They should not be alive," she whispered. "And they should not choose anyone before their mother." "They're just babies," Danny said. They were scared. The Empress closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears that reflected the purple light. "Yes, they're just babies." She reached out slowly with one massive claw and gently touched the smallest baby's head. It stirred but did not wake, too comfortable against Danny's warm chest. "You have done something impossible today, Danny Reed," the Empress said. "And now both our futures have changed forever." Danny's parents arrived 12 minutes later, running into the royal chamber with faces full of panic. His mother, Dr. Lisa Reed, went pale when she saw him sitting on the floor with 3 baby dragons bundled in his jacket. His father, Dr. Robert Reed, actually stumbled and had to catch himself against the doorframe. The Empress had dismissed her guards but remained in the room, watching Danny with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. 2 Saltharian medical staff worked quietly nearby, scanning the babies with handheld devices while Danny held them. Daniel Marcus Reed. His mother started, using his full name, which meant serious trouble. Then she looked at the Empress and seemed to forget what she was going to say. "Your son saved the royal hatchlings from injury," the Empress said. Her voice was formal now, controlled, but Danny could hear something strained underneath. "He acted with compassion when they hatched prematurely." "I'm sorry," Danny's father said quickly. "He shouldn't have been in here. We'll take him back to our quarters immediately." "No." The word came out sharp. The Empress looked at the babies in Danny's arms. "You will not." One of the medical staff, an older Saltharian with silver scales, approached the Empress. He spoke in their language, but his tone was clearly amazed. The Empress nodded slowly, then turned back to Danny's parents. "I must explain something about my species," she said. "Albino hatchlings appear once every 1,000 years in royal clutches. They are born without the ability to regulate their body temperature properly. They cannot produce the internal fire that sustains normal Saltharians. In our recorded history, all albino hatchlings die within 3 days of hatching." Danny looked down at the 3 babies sleeping against his chest. They looked fine to him, breathing steadily, their small bodies relaxed and warm. "Our tradition," the Empress continued, and her voice cracked slightly, "is to end their suffering quickly. A mercy ritual performed by the mother." She closed her golden eyes. "I intended to do this tonight, after the diplomatic formalities." Danny's mother made a soft sound of horror. His father gripped her shoulder. "But the hatchlings have bonded with your son first," the Empress said. "In Saltharian culture, the first bond is sacred. It cannot be broken without killing the hatchlings anyway. And more than that." She opened her eyes again, and they were bright with emotion. "They are thriving. Dr. Sareth reports their vital signs are stronger than any albino hatchlings ever recorded. Your son's body heat is sustaining them." The silver-scaled doctor spoke in English, his words heavily accented. "Human core temperature is 0.8 degrees higher than adult Saltharian, but matches optimal hatchling incubation needs. The boy is living nest." Danny felt the baby stir. The smallest one, tucked closest to his heart, made a tiny sound like a question. He stroked her head gently with one finger, and she settled again. "What are you asking?" Danny's mother said quietly. The Empress looked away. I am asking if your son would be willing to continue helping care for the hatchlings. I am asking if you would permit something that has never happened in Southarian history. I am asking you to let a human child save my children's lives because I cannot." The silence that followed was heavy and long. Danny looked up at his parents. His father's expression was complicated, worried, and sympathetic at once. His mother was staring at the Empress with something like understanding in her eyes. "How long?" his father asked. 3 weeks, the doctor said. "If albino hatchlings survive 3 weeks, their internal systems stabilize. They can regulate temperature independently. But constant warmth is needed until then." "I want to help," Danny said. Everyone looked at him. He felt his face get hot, but pushed on. "They need someone. I can do it." His mother knelt beside him, looking at the 3 white babies. "Danny, this is bigger than you understand. This is the royal family of an entire empire. If something goes wrong, if one of them gets hurt, your son has steady hands and a gentle heart," the Empress said softly. "In the past hour, I have watched him adjust his position 17 times to ensure each hatchling remains comfortable. He speaks to them softly. He responds to their needs before they cry. These are not skills taught in Southarian nests anymore. We have forgotten them because hatchlings always survive under normal care." Danny's father rubbed his face. What would this arrangement look like? They talked for almost an hour, working out details. Danny would visit the royal quarters 3 times each day, morning, afternoon, and evening. He would hold the babies and keep them warm. Southarian staff would handle feeding and medical care. Danny's parents could be present whenever they wanted. Security would be intense. But underneath all the planning, Danny saw the real truth. The Empress was terrified, not of him, but of hope. She kept looking at her babies with desperate longing, like she wanted to believe they might live, but was too scared to try. 3 days passed. Danny visited exactly as scheduled, and every time the babies squeaked with excitement when they heard his footsteps. They were already getting bigger, their wings growing stronger. They had started eating properly, taking the special food the doctors prepared. On the 4th day, the smallest baby got sick. Danny arrived for his afternoon visit and immediately knew something was wrong. The little one, who had started thinking of as Pearl because she was so pale and precious, was breathing too fast. Her skin felt hot and dry instead of warm and soft. The Empress paced the chamber while doctors worked. Danny sat on the floor with Pearl in his arms, his jacket wrapped around her, his hand on her chest, feeling her rapid heartbeat. "Respiratory infection," the head doctor reported. "Common in albinos. Systemic failure begins in approximately 6 hours. We have no successful treatment. Try anyway," the Empress commanded. Her voice was harsh, almost breaking. They used medicines and machines and techniques Danny did not understand. Nothing worked. Pearl got worse. Her breathing became labored, painful to hear. The other 2 babies, who Danny now thought of as Cloud and Sky, whimpered in distress. "Let me stay with her," Danny said. His parents had been called, but Danny refused to put Pearl down. He sat against the wall and held her against his chest, right over his heart. He talked to her softly, telling her stories about Earth, about his dog Buster, about the ocean and mountains. He sang a song his grandmother used to sing to him when he was sick. The Empress sat across from him, her massive form curled in a position that looked uncomfortable. She watched her smallest daughter struggle to breathe against a human boy's chest. Tears ran down her scaled face, glittering in the chamber's light. Midnight passed. Then 2 in the morning. Then 4. Danny's parents brought him water and tried to get him to rest. He refused. Pearl's breathing got slower, deeper. The crisis rhythm changed to something more normal. By dawn, she was sleeping peacefully, her temperature back to normal. The doctors could not explain it. They theorized about human heartbeat rhythms regulating distressed hatchling systems. They talked about pheromones and warmth distribution. None of their explanations sounded confident. The Empress knew the truth, though. Danny saw in her eyes. Sometimes survival was not about medicine or science. Sometimes it was just about not being alone. "Why?" the Empress asked him as morning light came through the chamber windows. "Why do you care so much for creatures you just met?" Danny looked down at Pearl, at Cloud and Sky now piled on his lap too, all 3 sleeping peacefully. The answer seemed obvious to him. They needed someone, he said simply. Everyone needs someone. The Empress was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was thoughtful, like she was working out a difficult problem. "My people believe strength is everything. We believe weakness must be cut away to keep the species strong. For 3,000 years, we have followed this rule." She looked at her 3 albino daughters. "Perhaps we have been wrong." Danny did not know what to say to that. so he just kept holding the babies. They were warm now, healthy, alive. That seemed more important than philosophy. The Empress reached out slowly and touched Pearl's head with one gentle claw. The baby stirred but stayed asleep, too comfortable to wake. I will speak to the High Council, the Empress said quietly. I will tell them my children will live. And I will tell them a human boy taught me what it means to be a true mother. News traveled fast in space. Within a week, everyone on Harmony's Gate knew about the human boy and the albino dragon babies. Within 2 weeks, the story had spread to Earth and across the Seltharian Empire. By the 3rd week, it had become a political crisis. Danny sat in the royal quarters playing a simple game with Pearl, Cloud, and Sky. They were twice the size they had been hatching, each now as big as a medium dog. They could fly in short bursts, gliding from furniture to furniture with increasing confidence. Right now, they were trying to stack building blocks with their small claws, competing to see who could build the tallest tower. Sky was winning. She was the boldest of the 3, always trying new things. Cloud kept getting distracted, curious about everything in the room. Pearl worked carefully and methodically, but her tower kept falling because she built it too tall and narrow. Try a wider base, Danny suggested. Pearl chirped at him and knocked her tower down, starting over with a broader foundation. She was the smartest, Danny thought, always learning from mistakes. The door to the chamber opened. The Empress entered with General Hastags, her military commander. Both looked grim. The hatchlings immediately abandoned their game and rushed to Danny, piling into his lap. They sensed tension in the adults and sought safety. Danny, the Empress said, sitting heavily on the floor across from him. She had started doing this, sitting at his level instead of towering above. The High Council has made contact. They're not pleased. What did they say? Danny asked, stroking Sky's head. She was trembling slightly. They have ordered me to return home immediately. They have ordered me to complete the mercy ritual. The Empress's voice was flat, controlled. They say allowing human influence over the royal bloodline is a disgrace to our species. They say I am weak for not following tradition. Danny felt his stomach drop. Pearl pressed closer to his chest, making small, worried sounds. General Hastags spoke for the first time. His voice was deep and rough. The Empress has refused the order. Danny looked up sharply. The Empress met his eyes. For the first time in 3 centuries of rule, I have defied the High Council. I have invoked an ancient law that places a mother's duty to ensure offspring survival above all other considerations, even tradition. What does that mean? Danny asked. It means I have started a political war within my own empire, the Empress said quietly. It means some will support me and some will oppose me. It means there may be consequences for all of us. Danny thought about this. He looked down at the 3 babies who trusted him completely. Pearl was watching his face with her intelligent pink eyes, trying to understand what the adults were discussing. Cloud had fallen asleep in his arms, exhausted from playing. Sky was still trembling, but trying to be brave. What do you want to do? Danny asked the Empress. She looked surprised by the question. What I want is irrelevant. I must do what is necessary. But what do you want? Danny pressed. The Empress stared at her daughters. Her golden eyes were bright with emotion. I want them to live. I want to watch them grow. I want to teach them to fly properly and speak properly and rule properly. I want what every mother wants, even though Seltharians are not supposed to admit such feelings. Then we keep going, Danny said simply. We keep them safe. General Hastags made a sound that might have been approval. The Empress looked at Danny with something like wonder. You are 8 years old, and you have simplified a crisis that is tearing apart my government. Danny shrugged. Grown-ups make things complicated. The babies are alive and happy. That's what matters. The next morning, Danny's parents sat him down for serious talk. Other human diplomats were there too, including Ambassador Chun, who looked very stressed. Danny, we need you to understand the situation, Ambassador Chun said carefully. The Seltharian Empire is experiencing internal conflict. Some of their fleets are declaring loyalty to the Empress. Others are following the High Council. There could be violence. Are they fighting over the babies? Danny asked. They are fighting over what the babies represent, his mother explained. Change versus tradition. Opening to other species versus staying isolated. Your friendship with the hatchlings has become a symbol. That's stupid, Danny said, then remembered he was talking to adults and added, sorry, but it is. Ambassador Chen actually smiled a little. Yes, it is, but politics often is. The question is whether you want to continue. No one will blame you if you want to go home. This has become dangerous. Danny thought about Pearl fighting to breathe in his arms. He thought about Cloud's curiosity and Sky's bravery. He thought about the Empress crying as she watched her children choose him over her. I'm staying, he said as father sighed. His mother looked both proud and terrified. Ambassador Chun nodded like he had expected this answer. That afternoon, the Empress made a broadcast to the entire Saltharian Empire. Danny watched on a screen in the royal quarters while the hatchlings napped in his lap. The Empress appeared formal and regal in the video, wearing ceremonial armor that made her look even more imposing. She showed her daughters. She showed them playing, flying, eating, thriving. She showed medical scans proving they were healthy. She introduced Danny, who felt awkward waving at billions of aliens watching across space. "These are my children," the Empress declared. "They live because a human boy showed compassion when I could not. They thrive because he offers warmth we cannot provide. This is not weakness. This is evolution. This is survival." She spoke about the agricultural negotiations, about human advances in food production that could save Saltharian worlds. She spoke about strength through cooperation instead of isolation. "I propose a treaty," she said. "Humans will share their knowledge. We will share ours. My daughters' lives will stand as proof that different species can support each other, that bonds of care transcend biology." The broadcast ended. Danny looked down at the sleeping hatchlings. They looked peaceful, unaware they were at the center of an empire's crisis. "Did it work?" Danny asked the Empress, who had stayed off camera during the broadcast but was now in the room. "We will know within hours," she said. "The High Council will respond. Public opinion will shift one way or another." They did not have to wait long. Within 3 hours, responses flooded in. The Empire was split almost evenly. Some Saltharians were inspired by the hatchling's survival. Others were horrified by human involvement in royal affairs. Then the threat came. Security detected 3 Saltharians on the station who were not part of any official delegation. They had falsified credentials and smuggled weapons. Intelligence suggested they were part of a traditionalist faction planning to kill Danny and the hatchlings, making it look like an accident. The Empress's reaction was immediate and fierce. She moved Danny and the hatchlings to the most secure section of the station. She placed guards outside every entrance. She contacted General Rodhax and ordered warships to the station. Danny found himself in a reinforced room with his parents, surrounded by armed guards, both human and Saltharian. The hatchlings sensed the fear and refused to leave his arms. They huddled against him, making distressed sounds. "I'm sorry," the Empress said, standing at the door. "I brought this danger to you." "You didn't," Danny said. He was trying to be brave, but his voice shook. "People who want to hurt babies brought the danger." The Empress knelt down, bringing her massive head close to Danny's level. "I swear to you, on my throne and my life, no harm will come to you or my daughters. I will protect you as I would any member of my family." That night, Danny could not sleep. The hatchlings finally dozed off, exhausted from stress. His parents sat nearby, holding hands and watching over him. Security reports came in every hour. The 3 suspects had been captured, but interrogation suggested others might be involved. Danny looked at Pearl, Cloud, and Sky. They trusted him completely. They had no idea some people wanted them dead just for existing, just for being different. He thought about what the Empress had said, about evolution, about survival, about bonds transcending biology. Maybe that was the point. Maybe the traditionalists were scared because the hatchlings proved their old ways were not the only ways. Maybe people feared change more than anything else. Sky stirred in her sleep, making a small sound. Danny stroked her white scales and sang softly until she settled. His grandmother's song, the one about being brave in the dark. The Empress watched from across the room. In the dim light, her golden eyes glowed softly. "You are remarkable," she said quietly. "You face danger with more courage than warriors twice your size." "I'm scared," Danny admitted. "Being brave does not mean not being scared," the Empress said. "It means doing what is right even when you are scared. You have taught me this. You have taught my entire empire this, though many do not want to learn." Danny did not know what to say to that. He was just a kid trying to keep 3 baby dragons safe. But looking at the Empress's face, he realized she was just a mother trying to keep her children alive. Maybe they were not so different after all. "Will they be okay?" Danny asked, meaning the babies, but also meaning everything, the empire and the fighting and the fear. The Empress touched Pearl's head gently. "Because of you, they have a chance. That is more than they had before. That is more than I dared hope." Outside, warships positioned themselves around the station. Inside, a boy and an Empress kept watch over 3 sleeping albino dragons. The future was uncertain, but in that moment, they were all still alive, still together, still fighting for a tomorrow where different did not mean doomed. The attack never came, but the fear did not leave. Danny's parents decided after long discussion that they would stay on Harmony's gate for 6 months. If the hatchlings could reach that milestone, they would be strong enough to survive without constant human warmth. Until then, Danny would continue visiting them daily under heavy security. The first few weeks after the assassination threat were tense. Danny could not go anywhere without guards. His normal visits to the royal quarters now involved security scans and armed escorts. The hatchlings hated it. They sensed the anxiety in every adult around them and became nervous and clingy. Pearl stopped eating properly. Cloud kept crying in the middle of sleep cycles. Sky tried to act brave, but flinched at sudden movements. They were growing bigger and stronger physically, but emotionally they were struggling, the Empress noticed. One morning, she dismissed all the guard from the inner chamber, keeping only General Rodhax outside the door. She sat on the floor with Danny and the hatchlings and spoke quietly. "They need normalcy," she said, watching Pearl refuse her food. "They need to feel safe again." "How do we do that?" Danny asked. "The danger is still real." "Yes, but we cannot let fear rule our lives." "That is another lesson you have taught me." The Empress looked at him seriously. "My daughters need to learn they are safe with us, that we are strong enough to protect them. Right now, they see only our fear." Danny thought about this. The hatchlings were huddled in his lap, taking comfort from his presence, but still anxious. He remembered when his dog Buster got scared during thunderstorms. His dad had taught him that if Danny stayed calm, Buster would calm down too. Animals took emotional cues from the people around them. "We need to play with them," Danny said. "Like normal. We need to act like everything is okay." The Empress looked doubtful. "While there are still threats, especially because there are threats," Danny said. "They need to know we are not afraid." So they tried it. Danny brought toys from the station's recreation center. The Empress told stories from Southarian history, making them exciting and funny instead of formal and serious. General Rodhax, surprisingly, turned out to be good at making silly sounds that made the hatchlings laugh. Slowly, over days and then weeks, the hatchlings relaxed. Pearl started eating again. Cloud slept through the nights. Sky's natural boldness returned. They grew and learned at an amazing pace. By the 8th week, they were the size of large dogs. They could fly across entire rooms without stopping. They had learned to speak simple words in both Southarian and English. They played games, solved puzzles, and showed distinct personalities. Pearl was thoughtful and careful. She liked quiet activities and learning new words. Cloud was endlessly curious, always exploring and asking questions. Sky was brave and athletic, always testing her limits and trying to fly higher and faster. Danny loved all three of them equally, but differently. He understood each one's needs and moods. He knew Pearl liked having her scales brushed gently. He knew Cloud needed new things to investigate or she got bored. He knew Sky needed challenges and praise when she accomplished something difficult. The Empress watched him with them and learned. She had been raised in a culture that valued discipline and strength. She had never seen this gentle, responsive style of parenting. She started copying Danny's techniques, speaking softer to the hatchlings, praising their efforts instead of only their successes. "You're teaching me how to be their mother," she told Danny one evening. "My own mother never showed me these things. Southarian royals are raised by nursery staff, not parents. We are taught independence from hatching." "That sounds lonely," Danny said. The Empress was quiet for a moment. "Yes, it was." On the 10th week, the High Council made another move. 3 counselors requested permission to visit Harmony's gate. They wanted to see the hatchlings in person, they said, to verify the Empress's claims about their health and development. The Empress was immediately suspicious. General Rodhax ran background checks on all 3 counselors. One was a known progressive who supported the Empress. One was a moderate undecided. One was a traditionalist who had publicly opposed everything the Empress had done. It could be a trap, General Rodhax warned. The traditionalist, Counselor Nethera, has connections to the faction that sent the assassins. It could also be an opportunity, the Empress countered. If they see my daughters thriving, if they meet Danny, if they witness the bond firsthand, minds might change. They debated for hours. Danny listened, but said nothing. He was getting used to adults making everything more complicated than it needed to be. Finally, the Empress looked at him. "What do you think, Danny? You have as much stake in this as anyone." Danny looked at the hatchlings, who were napping in a pile on a cushion nearby. They looked healthy and happy, their white scales gleaming in the light. "Let them come. People should see the truth." The Empress smiled slightly. Simple wisdom again. "Very well. We will allow the visit." The counselors arrived 3 days later. Counselor Draven, The progressive was younger than the others and had scales that were deep blue. Counselor Thesh, the moderate, was older with gray scales and a cautious manner. Counselor Nethera, the traditionalist, was ancient, her scales pale with age, her eyes sharp and suspicious. They gathered in the royal chambers. The hatchlings immediately sensed strangers and hid behind Danny, peeking out nervously. Counselor Nethera's expression was cold as she looked at them. "These are the albinos," she said flatly. "They appear healthy, I will grant that. But allowing human interference in the royal bloodline is unprecedented and inappropriate." "Danny is not interfering," the Empress said, keeping her voice level. "He is supporting. There is a difference." "Is there?" Nethera challenged. "They have bonded with him over you. They follow him, obey him, seek comfort from him. You have allowed a human child to supplant the mother bond. This is weakness." The Empress's scales rattled slightly, a sign of anger. But before she could respond, Pearl stepped out from behind Danny. The smallest hatchling walked directly to Counselor Nethera and sat down in front of her. Everyone froze. Pearl looked up at the old counselor with her intelligent pink eyes. Then she spoke in clear Saltharian, words she had been practicing with Danny. "Not weakness. Love." The chamber went silent. Counselor Nethera stared at the small white hatchling. Pearl continued speaking, her voice small but steady. "Mother wanted us to live. Danny helped us live. Both loved us. Not weakness. Strength together." Counselor Draven made a soft sound of amazement. Even Counselor Thesh looked moved. Nethera's expression was unreadable. Cloud and Sky came out from behind Danny too, flanking their sister. Sky spoke next, her voice bolder. "We are strong because they are strong. Different strong, same strong." Cloud added her piece, sounding curious as always. "Why choose one? We choose all. Family is big." Danny had not taught them these words. They'd figure out what to say on their own. The hatchlings were speaking for themselves, defending their own existence and their own choices. The Empress looked at her daughters with visible pride and wonder. She glanced at Danny, who was equally surprised. The hatchlings were growing up, developing their own thoughts and voices. Counselor Nethera studied the three albinos for a long moment. Finally, she spoke, her voice still stern but less cold. "They speak well for one so young. Their intelligence is evident." She looked at the Empress. "I came prepared to demand you follow tradition. But I cannot deny what I see with my own eyes. These hatchlings are thriving in ways no albinos have before." She turned to Danny. "Human child, approach." Danny walked over slowly. Nethera was intimidating, ancient, and powerful. But he remembered what the Empress had said about being brave while scared. He stood straight and met her eyes. "Do you understand what you have done?" Nethera asked. "You have disrupted thousands of years of tradition. You have challenged our culture's fundamental beliefs. You have tied yourself to the fate of an empire, not your own." "I just helped some babies who needed help," Danny said quietly. Nethera stared at him. Then something unexpected happened. She laughed. It was a harsh, scratchy sound, but definitely a laugh. Simple and honest. Perhaps that is what we needed. Complications and pride have ruled us for too long. She looked at the Empress. "I will not oppose you further. I cannot promise the same for others on the council, but you have my support. The hatchlings live. The human boy may continue his role. We will see if this experiment brings fortune or disaster." Counselor Thesh nodded in agreement. "I concur. This situation is unprecedented, but the results speak for themselves." After the counselors left, the Empress sat heavily on the floor. The hatchlings climbed into her lap for the first time voluntarily, nuzzling against her in affection and seeking comfort. She wrapped her wings around them carefully, and they chirped contentedly. Danny watched, feeling a warm happiness in his chest. The hatchlings loved him, but they also loved their mother. They were figuring out how to have both, to make their family bigger instead of choosing sides. The Empress looked at Danny over her daughters' heads. "Thank you," she said softly, "for all of it, for saving them, for teaching me, for being brave when I could not be." "You're brave now," Danny said. "That's what matters." Outside, the political situation in the Saltharian Empire continued to shift and change. But inside the royal chambers, a family was learning to exist in a new way. Different species, different backgrounds, different everything. But together. And somehow, that was enough. 3 months after the hatchlings were born, a new crisis emerged. Not political this time, but medical. Danny arrived for his morning visit and immediately knew something was wrong. Pearl lay on her cushion, breathing, but barely moving. Her scales, normally bright white, looked dull and gray. Cloud and Sky huddled beside her, making distressed sounds. The Empress was already there with 4 doctors. They had machines and scanners spread around Pearl, taking readings and analyzing data. Danny dropped his backpack and ran to Pearl's side, gently touching her head. She felt too warm, feverish. "What's wrong with her?" Danny asked, his voice tight with fear. The head doctor, Sareth, looked grim. "Genetic degradation. We knew this was a risk with albinos. Her cellular structure is breaking down. The same condition that kills all albinos, just slower because she has been stable for so long. Can you fix it?" Danny demanded. "Saltheria medicine has no cure," Sareth said quietly. "We have tried for thousands of years. The genetic flaw is too deep, too complex." Danny looked at the Empress. She stood rigid, her face a mask of controlled pain. This was what she had feared from the beginning. That hope would make the loss worse. That watching her daughter thrive, only to die anyway, would hurt more than never hoping at all. "There has to be something," Danny said desperately. He held Pearl's small head in his hands. She opened her pink eyes slightly and made a soft sound, recognizing him even in her pain. His mother entered the chamber, having been called by the medical team. She was a plant scientist, not a doctor, but she immediately went to the monitors and started reading the data. Her expression grew more focused. "This cellular breakdown," she said slowly, reading through screens of information. "It is triggered by what exactly?" "Temperature regulation failure," Sareth explained. "Albinos cannot maintain the internal fire normal Saltharians have. Over time, cells that depend on that energy begin to fail. It starts in the nervous system and spreads." Danny's mother pulled up more charts. "But Pearl has been maintaining temperature through external heat. Danny's body warmth has been supplementing what she cannot produce internally." "Yes, but it is not enough long-term," Sareth said. "The cellular damage accumulates regardless. It is only a matter of time, unless we approach it differently," Danny's mother said, her voice getting excited. "You're trying to fix the temperature regulation from inside. But what if we support the cells from outside? What if we give them the energy they need through a different pathway?" Sareth looked skeptical. "Such a thing is not possible." "It might be," Danny's father said, entering the conversation. He had been working on the agricultural negotiations and understood the science of cellular energy. "Plants use external energy sources. Photosynthesis. What if we could create a supplement that provides cellular energy through ingestion or absorption instead of internal generation?" The Saltharian doctors looked at each other. "This is not how our biology works," one of them protested. "Your normal biology, no," Danny's mother agreed. "But albino biology is already different, already broken in the way you measure it. We need to think about supporting the difference instead of trying to force it to be normal." They talked rapidly, using scientific terms Danny did not understand. But he got the basic idea. They wanted to give Pearl energy through food or medicine instead of relying on her body to make it internally. Like how Danny ate food for energy instead of producing it from nothing. "How long to develop this?" the Empress asked. Her voice was steady, but her golden eyes were desperate. "Days, maybe weeks for a prototype," Danny's father said. "If it works at all." "This is completely theoretical. Pearl does not have weeks," Sareth said quietly. "Maybe days, maybe hours." Danny felt tears burning in his eyes. He looked down at Pearl, who was watching him with such trust. She believed he would fix this. She believed he could keep her safe. But he was just a kid. He could not invent miracle cures. Cloud and Sky pressed close to Danny, seeking comfort. They understood their sister was dying. They made mourning sounds, traditional Saltharian grief, calls that sounded heartbreaking coming from one so young. "Try anyway," the Empress said firmly. "Use whatever resources you need. Contact anyone who might help. Human scientists, Saltharian researchers, anyone. My daughter will not die without a fight." The next 2 days were frantic. Danny's parents worked with Saltharian scientists, combining knowledge for both species. They analyzed Pearl's biology, tested different compounds, ran simulations. Other human doctors joined the effort remotely from Earth. Saltharian medical facilities across the Empire contributed data about albino genetics. Danny stayed with Pearl almost constantly. He held her, kept her warm, talked to her softly. His parents brought him food and made him rest in shifts, but he refused to leave the chamber for long. The Empress stayed too, keeping vigil over her dying daughter. Cloud and Sky understood something important was happening. They stayed quiet, not playing or causing trouble. They took turns sitting with Pearl, grooming her scales gently with their tongues in the Saltharian way of showing affection that on the evening of the second day, they had a prototype. A thick liquid that contained concentrated cellular energy derived from both human nutritional supplements and Saltharian metabolic compounds. It was bright blue and smelled strange. "We have no idea if this will work," Danny's mother warned. "It could do nothing. It could make things worse." "Give it to her," the Empress said without hesitation. They administered a small dose through a feeding tube. Then everyone waited. Minutes passed with no change. Pearl's breathing stayed shallow. Her temperature remained too high. The monitors showed no improvement. Danny felt hope dying in his chest. He pressed his face against Pearl's scales and whispered, "Please work. Please." More minutes. The doctors checked readings and shook their heads. It was not working. They had failed. Then Pearl stirred. Just slightly. Her breathing deepened, becoming more regular. The temperature readings started to drop back toward normal. Cellular activity on the monitors began to increase. "It is working," Sarah said, his voice filled with disbelief. "The cells are responding. They're taking in the external energy and stabilizing." Over the next hour, Pearl improved steadily. Her color came back. Her eyes brightened. She made a small, hungry sound, the first positive sign she had given in days. By morning, she was sitting up and eating on her own. By the next evening, she was playing weakly with her siblings. The Empress cried openly, not caring who saw. Danny's parents embraced, exhausted and relieved. The Saltharian doctors looked at their data with wonder, realizing they had just made medical history. "She will need the supplement daily," Sarah said, "possibly for life. Her biology cannot support itself naturally. But with this, she can live. They all can live." Because the same treatment would work for Cloud and Sky too. All 3 albino hatchlings would need the daily supplement, but they could survive to adulthood and beyond. The condition that had killed every albino in Saltharian history for thousands of years had finally been solved. And it had been solved because humans and Saltharians worked together. The news spread across the Empire rapidly. The impossible had happened. Royal albino hatchlings were not only surviving, but thriving. And the cure came from cooperation between species, from combining different types of knowledge and medicine. Public opinion shifted dramatically. Even traditionalists had to acknowledge the results. The Empress had been right. Cooperation was stronger than isolation. Different approaches could solve problems old methods could not. The agricultural negotiations, which had been stalled for months during the political crisis, suddenly moved forward quickly. Both sides were motivated now. Saltharians had seen what humans could contribute. Humans had seen what they could accomplish with access to Saltharian resources and knowledge. Danny sat on the observation deck where this whole story had started, watching stars drift by. Pearl, Cloud, and Sky were piled in his lap, healthy and happy. They were getting big enough that they barely fit anymore, but they still tried to cuddle close whenever possible. The Empress sat beside them, her massive form somehow feeling comfortable and familiar now instead of intimidating. They sat in peaceful silence, just existing together. "You saved them twice," the Empress said quietly. "Once with warmth, once with hope. My people will remember this forever." "Your people saved them too," Danny said. "The doctors, the scientists. Everyone worked together." "Yes," the Empress agreed. "That is the lesson, is it not? Alone, we would have failed. Together, we succeeded." Pearl chirped in agreement. She was learning to speak in full sentences now. All 3 hatchlings were. They understood more than most people realized. "Together is better," Pearl said in her small, clear voice. "Different makes strong." Sky added, "We are different. Danny is different. Mother is different. All different, all strong." Cloud, always curious, asked a question that made the adults pause. "Why do people think different was bad? Different is good. Different means more ideas." The Empress looked at her daughter thoughtfully. "Because different is scary when you do not understand it. Because change is hard. Because sometimes holding on to old ways feels safer than trying new ways. But old ways almost killed us," Pearl pointed out with simple logic. "Yes," the Empress said softly. "Yes, they did. And you 3 are proof that sometimes the old ways are wrong. That sometimes we must change or die." Danny leaned back against the window, feeling the warmth of 3 baby dragons against his chest and the comfort of knowing they would be okay. Outside, human and Saltharian ships flew in formation together, practicing joint maneuvers. A new alliance was forming, born from one boy's compassion for 3 struggling babies. "What happens next?" Danny asked. The Empress smiled, a human expression she had learned from watching Danny and his parents. "Next, we continue. We grow. We learn. We build something new together. The future is unwritten, but for the first time in my long life, I am excited to see it." The hatchlings chirped in happy agreement, and for a moment, everything was perfect. Different species, different worlds, different everything. But somehow, impossibly, a family point 6 months had passed since the hatchlings were born. Danny stood in the diplomatic hall of Harmony's Gate, wearing formal clothes that felt stiff and uncomfortable. Around him, hundreds of beings from dozens of species gathered for the treaty signing ceremony. Humans, Saltharians, and representatives from other worlds who had watched this unlikely story unfold. Pearl, Cloud, and Sky sat beside him. They were huge now, each the size of a small car. Their white scales gleamed like polished marble, and their pink eyes held sharp intelligence. They wore ceremonial bands around their necks, marking them as royal hatchlings. They sat with perfect posture, having been coached by their mother on proper behavior for important events. But every few minutes, one of them would lean over and nuzzle Danny gently, needing the reassurance of his presence even at their size. He was still their favorite person, even though they loved their mother deeply too. The Empress stood at the front of the hall in full ceremonial armor. She looked magnificent and powerful, every bit the ruler of a galactic empire. Beside her stood Ambassador Chun and Danny's parents, representing humanity. The treaty was comprehensive. Humans would provide agricultural technology and biological research. Saltharians would share advanced medical technology and provide military protection for Earth. Both species would establish cultural exchange programs and joint scientific facilities. It was the beginning of a true alliance, but everyone knew the real foundation of this treaty was not politics or trade. It was 3 albino hatchlings and 1 human boy who had accidentally shown an empire that different could be good. The ceremony began with formal speeches. Politicians and ambassadors talked about cooperation and mutual benefit and historical significance. Danny tried to pay attention, but got distracted when Cloud kept fidgeting. She was curious about everything in the hall and wanted to explore. "Stay still," Danny whispered to her. She huffed, but settled down, leaning her large head on his shoulder. Then it was the Empress's turn to speak. She approached the podium with her natural grace and authority. Her voice carried through the hall without needing amplification. 6 months ago, I came to this station believing I knew what strength meant. I believed tradition and isolation kept my people safe. I believed difference was weakness and adaptation was failure. She paused, looking at her 3 daughters. I was wrong. The hall was silent. The Empress continued, her voice carrying weight and emotion. My daughters were born different. By our old laws, they should have died. By our old beliefs, they were cursed and weak. But a human child, ignorant of our customs and free from our prejudices, saw only 3 babies who needed help. He offered warmth when I offered only tradition. He chose compassion when I chose fear. Danny felt his face get hot as hundreds of beings looked at him. Pearl pressed closer to his side protectively. "These 6 months have taught me more than 3 centuries of rule," the Empress said. "I've learned that strength comes in many forms. That wisdom can come from the young. But the most powerful bonds are built on care, not duty. That survival sometimes requires us to abandon everything we thought we knew." She looked directly at Danny. "A human child saved my children's lives twice. He saved them first with his warmth, and second with the hope that inspired humans and Saltharians to work together on a cure we all thought impossible. He did this not for political gain or personal glory. He did it because, in his words, they needed someone." The Empress paused, then said something that made everyone in the hall inhale sharply. "Today I am signing a treaty between species, but I'm also making a personal declaration. By the ancient laws of Saltharian royal lineage, I am formally adopting Danny Reed as ward of the Imperial family. He will have the rights and protections of a royal family member for life." Danny's parents looked shocked. Danny felt the hatchlings all press against him, excited and happy. This meant he was officially part of their family, recognized by law and tradition. "I do this not as a political gesture," the Empress continued, "but as a mother recognizing the being who co-parented my children when I could not. Danny Reed will always have a place in the Imperial family. This human boy is my daughter's brother in all ways that matter." The hall erupted in noise. Some beings applauded. Others whispered in surprise. The human delegation looked proud and moved. Danny saw his mother wiping tears from her eyes. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Danny changed out of the formal clothes as quickly as possible and found himself surrounded by people wanting to talk to him. Reporters asked questions. Diplomats congratulated him. Scientists wanted to discuss the hatchling's development. It was overwhelming. The hatchlings sensed his discomfort and formed a protective circle around him, gently discouraging people from getting too close. Sky particularly took her protective duties seriously, positioning herself between Danny and anyone who approached too eagerly. Finally, the Empress rescued him. She invited him and his parents to her private quarters away from the crowds. The hatchlings immediately relaxed, spreading out across the room and making themselves comfortable. "That was a lot," Danny said, flopping onto a cushion. "Yes," the Empress agreed. "I apologize for not warning you about the adoption announcement. I wanted it to be genuine, not rehearsed." Danny's father spoke carefully. "Your Majesty, we appreciate the honor, but Danny is still our son. We do not want to lose him to royal duties or obligations." The Empress settled on the floor, folding her wings carefully. "I would never take him from you. The adoption is symbolic and legal, offering protection and status. But Danny will remain with his family. The hatchlings and I will simply be an extension of that family. Like having weird alien aunts and sisters," Danny said, then looked worried. "I mean, not weird in a bad way." The Empress laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "I understood your meaning. Yes, something like that." Pearl climbed into Danny's lap, despite being far too big for it. She had always been the most affectionate, the one who needed physical closeness. Danny wrapped his arms around her neck, and she made a happy rumbling sound. "What happens now?" Danny's mother asked. "The treaty is signed. The hatchlings are stable. Do we return to Earth?" Danny's stomach dropped. He had not thought about this. He had been so focused on keeping the hatchlings alive that he had not considered what came after. "You are free to do as you choose," the Empress said gently, "though I hope you will stay involved. The cultural exchange programs will need leaders. The joint research facilities will need staff. And personally," she looked at her daughters, "I would miss you, all of you. You have become part of our lives." Cloud spoke up from across the room. "Please stay. We need you. Not just Danny, all of you. Dr. Lisa teaches us about Earth plants. Dr. Robert explains how energy works in different ways. You are our teachers." Sky added, "and our family. Family should stay close." Pearl, still in Danny's lap, looked up at him with her pink eyes. "You are not leaving, are you? You promised to stay until we could take care of ourselves." "You can take care of yourselves now," Danny pointed out. "You are huge and smart and healthy. But we still need you," Pearl said quietly. "Maybe not to survive, but to be happy. Is that okay to need?" Danny looked at his parents. His mother was smiling through tears. His father looked thoughtful, but not unhappy. They were good people who understood that sometimes family expanded in unexpected ways. "We will stay," his mother said, "at least for a few more years. The research opportunities here are incredible." And she looked at the three hatchlings. "You are right. You're family now." The relief in the room was obvious. The hatchlings made happy sounds and clustered around the humans, careful of their size, but unable to contain their joy. The Empress bowed her head in gratitude. Over the next months, life settled into a new normal. Danny attended school via quantum link, learning from both human and Saltharian teachers. He spent afternoons with the hatchlings, who were now learning advanced mathematics, art, history, and diplomacy. They were growing into their roles as royal heirs, but they remained playful and affectionate with him. The cultural exchange program brought humans and Saltharians together daily. Some interactions were awkward, some were tense, but slowly, genuine friendships formed. Both species learned from each other, shared meals, worked on projects together. The hatchlings, moving easily between both worlds, became symbols of what cooperation could achieve. Other species took notice. If humans and Saltharians could overcome their differences, maybe others could too. New alliances formed. Old conflicts found peaceful resolutions. The galactic community began to shift toward cooperation over competition. 1 year after the hatchlings were born, Danny stood again in the observation deck, where this had all started. He was 9 now, taller and more confident. Pearl, Cloud, and Sky stood with him, now fully grown juveniles. They could fly through space with their own environmental shields, speak multiple languages fluently, and debate philosophy with scholars twice their age. But they were still his sisters in all the ways that mattered. They still sought his opinion on important decisions. They still played games with him. They still curled up close when they were tired or stressed. "Do you ever regret it?" Pearl asked him. "That day you heard us crying? You could have walked away. Your life would be simpler." Danny thought about this seriously. His life had gotten incredibly complicated. He had been threatened, scared, thrust into politics he barely understood. He could not go anywhere without security. His face was known across multiple worlds, but he looked at his 3 sisters, brilliant and alive. He thought about the friendship between his parents and the Empress. He thought about the treaty and the alliance and all the good that had come from one moment of compassion. No regrets, he said firmly. You needed someone. I'm glad it was me. Sky nuzzled his shoulder gently. We are glad too. You are the best brother. Cloud added, even if you are tiny and squishy. Danny laughed and pushed her snout away playfully. You are just jealous that I can fit through normal doors. The Empress entered the observation deck. She had started joining them for these quiet moments, enjoying the informal family time. She settled near them, looking out at the stars. The Council has approved the expansion of the exchange programs, she reported. 5 more human universities will partner with Southarian academies. 3 joint research stations will be built. The alliance grows stronger. Because 3 babies refused to die, Danny said. Because 1 boy refused to let them, the Empress corrected gently. She looked at her daughters with endless pride and love. You 3 have changed everything. You have proven that evolution and adaptation are not weakness, but survival. That bonds built on choice and care are stronger than bonds of duty alone. We just wanted to live, Pearl said simply. Danny helped us live. Everything else happened because people chose to help each other instead of fighting. Cloud, ever curious, asked, what would have happened if Danny had not found us? If we had died like all the other albinos? The Empress was quiet for a long moment. Then I would have followed tradition, completed the mercy ritual, returned to my empire unchanged. The alliance would never have formed. Both our species would have remained separate, weaker alone. So we saved everyone, Sky said, sounding pleased with herself. You did, the Empress agreed, by being brave enough to survive. By being different in a way that forced us all to reconsider what different means. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching ships from multiple species travel past the station. Human vessels flew alongside Southarian warships in joint patrols. Trade ships from a dozen worlds came and went. The galaxy was changing slowly but surely because of 3 albino dragons and 1 human boy. Tell me something, the Empress said to Danny. That first day, when you picked up Pearl as she fell, did you have any idea what would happen? Any sense of the importance of that moment? Danny shook his head. I just saw a baby about to get hurt. I caught her. That is all. That is all, the Empress repeated softly. Perhaps that is the most important lesson. That world-changing moments often look like simple kindness. That the most powerful thing any being can do is care when no one expects them to. Pearl leaned her large head against Danny's side. You cared when even our mother could not. You taught an empire what strength really means. You taught me too, the Empress added. You all did. About patience and playfulness and love that has nothing to do with duty. About being a family instead of just fulfilling roles. The sunset through the observation window painted everything in shades of gold and orange. The Empress, 3 albino dragons who should never have survived, and 1 human boy who had accidentally changed the course of galactic history. They sat together, family in the truest sense, watching the universe turn. I love you, Danny said suddenly. He was not usually good at saying things like that, but it felt important to say out loud. All 3 hatchlings responded immediately. We love you too, the Empress added softly, as do I, little guardian. You saved my children, but more than that, you saved me from my own fear. You show me a better way to live and lead and love. For that, I will be grateful for all my remaining centuries. Danny felt warm and content. This was his family. Strange and complicated and nothing like what he had expected when his parents brought him to a space station 6 months ago. But it was real and good and worth everything. Together is better, Pearl said, echoing the words she had spoken months ago. Different makes strong, Sky added. Family is big, Cloud finished. Yes, the Empress agreed, her voice full of emotion. Family is big, and we are all part of it now. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance. Inside, an impossible family existed in defiance of all expectations. 3 albino dragons, an ancient empress, 2 human scientists, and 1 9-year-old boy who had taught an empire how to change. And somewhere in the galaxy, other beings watched and wondered if they too could build something new. If they too could choose compassion over tradition, cooperation over competition, hope over fear. The answer, Danny thought, was simple. Of course they could. They just had to start with 1 small act of kindness. 1 moment of seeing someone who needed help and choosing to care. Everything else would follow. Just like it had for him. Just like it had for 3 albino babies who refused to be cursed. Just like it had for an empress who learned to be a mother. Together. Different. Strong. Family. That was how you changed the world.